Yeah.
So go ahead and fill me in.
We're not having a great time.
Okay.
We've had him for a year and a half. His barking is hard to live with.
Mm-hmm.
Constant,
Okay.
Barks.
constant. I work from home, and it's all day, every day.
Okay.
He demand barks. He barks when stimulated by something outside, like a squirrel, another dog, someone walking in the alley. If we sit down to dinner, he's going to bark at us, like loud, really loud barks.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so that we're in our kitchen a lot, like a lot of families. You couldn't be on a phone call. You can't do anything. You can't talk to each other because he's barking uncontrollably.
Okay.
So that's probably the most pressing thing.
Mm-hmm.
Generally, after that, he is just very reactive on the leash.
Mm-hmm.
Can't really deal with another dog. He wants to either play with the other dog or just have a confrontation of some kind.
Mm-hmm.
His just general obedience is low.
Okay.
So we don't have great control of him. We had a dog of almost the same breed for 12 years, who was great. He was bigger.
Sure.
We trained him, I don't know how.
Yeah, I mean, it
Our
was
kids
fun.
keep saying, how did you train Finn? I'm like, we did all the same things.
It wasn't he wasn't perfect.
Sure.
He
But
was
he
twice
wasn't
the size.
this. He wasn't this.
Sure.
He was a mix of a Labradoodle and a Golden Doodle.
Okay.
He is one of these Australians.
Yeah. The Aussie Doodles.
Yeah, he's a lot higher strung.
Uh-huh.
And I'm saying that even though our old dog was like an alpha with like a chase drive
Mhm.
off the charts,
Mhm.
like he lived for the ball.
Mhm.
This guy's not really like that. He's just really excitable.
He paces the sliding door in the kitchen. Like, he can't just lay down.
Yeah.
The only time he can lay down is if I put him in his crate.
Okay.
So we can account for, we're in different stages of life. We have kids. We didn't have kids when we trained the other one.
Mhm.
We're very busy, like a lot of people. Kids are highly scheduled, all that.
Mhm.
Could we have done a much better job? Yeah, but we are where we are.
Okay.
I should tell you, also leave a little soft leash on him at all times in the house.
Okay.
And he has no freedom. He
Okay.
lives, he's with one of us, or he's in the kitchen with us, gated, and then if we leave, we would crate him.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's the reasoning behind that?
Because he just can't, like, calm down and sleep.
Okay.
He paces looking for squirrels, looking for birds.
Mm.
Like, he can't just lay down.
Mm-hmm.
But if you put him in the cage and he can't see out the sliding door, he will eventually give up and go to sleep.
Sure. I gotcha. So outside the sliding door, he's able to view life, I guess,
Yeah,
Yeah.
which keeps him stimulated.
And we live in a very, Chicago alley with a million wires.
Okay.
So there's always a bird or a squirrel.
Oh, sure.
There's
Okay.
never a moment without a bird or a squirrel on one of those wires. And
Okay.
so, yeah, he's on constant alert.
Sure.
For something.
Okay.
Some animal.
Anything else?
Let's
Okay. How'd you guys find us?
My stepsister had you guys train her dog.
Who's-
Worked out well. Her name's Jody Glickman.
Her
Big
dog
dog.
is Wrigley.
Oh, sure, sure,
Big
sure.
She was like,
Burnt
we are,
out.
she was gonna get rid of Wrigley. And
Yeah.
she found you guys, so.
Great.
she told us to.
Yeah. So, I see this all the time. So no problem there. Part of your dog's problem is overstimulation, which is the inability to turn off.
Yeah.
And overstimulation can sometimes look like anxiety, or it can become anxiety because the dog is unable to settle. Does that make sense? So, and he has prey drive, and with that sliding door, it doesn't help because he's learned he can see things, and that also keeps the dog stimulated.
We
Okay.
did put copy paper up all over,
Okay.
but he will jump to see over and he will go like this to squint in between the copy.
Sure. I'm assuming is the copy paper something you want to remove?
Yeah.
Ideally.
Okay. All right. Just making sure. I assume so, but
The other reason we have him like always with us or in the kitchen with the gate closed is we don't trust him enough like to not destroy things or, you know.
He hasn't destroyed much, but I think it's because he's never been alone.
Yeah.
sure. Part of it can also be with the overstimulation. When the dog can't turn off, they have to outlet it. It has to go somewhere. That's usually destructive behavior. Chewing on shoes, tearing up toilet paper, stuff like that. So when a dog is past the puppy stage or the puppy chewing stage, if the owner continues to see chewing, it's almost always overstimulation-based frustration. Okay. So I've had cases where we do the first class and they come back to like, Jesse, all the chewing has stopped. And I go, it's because of the structure and the brain's able to turn off now, so it's no longer frustrated. In other cases, if the chewing persists, then we just have to correct the behavior directly, which I'll cover as well. Or the dog just likes to chew, so then I'll tell them like, keep everything put away, and when you see your dog looking bored, give them the bully stick, give them the bone, whereas typically those things are free access to the dog, and then it has low value, because the dog can access it any time. But like your shoes, if you see that, you would want to take that away, so the dog goes, hey, this is a limited resource now, and it draws your attention, so then it also draws them to chew on those things more. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So there's like a number of things that we can do, but when I hear any kind of destructive behavior, almost always it's overstimulation frustration, or if it happens when you're gone, then that's clearly separation anxiety, okay? Which is my next question, because you guys kind of always have him with you for the most part, does he have separation anxiety?
I think he does.
Yeah. I mean, I guess, so if we are leaving the house and we put him in the crate in the kitchen and we're still going about our getting ready to leave, he might be in there barking in protest, the whole time.
He's bitten out of 2 crates.
Okay.
Like metal
Yeah,
Okay.
he's
houdini.
I mean, when he was like a week, when we'd had him for a week and he was like 8 weeks old, he figured out how to unlock the crate, just the slide, one of those kind of deals. And he's bitten through the bars, 2 crates. So
Like bending them.
Like, he weakened some. It took us a long time to figure out what in the world was going on, but he grabs his jaws
Yeah.
on it.
Yeah.
They eventually, so his existing crate has a hole he can stick his head out of if he
He
wants.
sticks
to.
it out.
He
He
can't.
looks around.
That is
And
funny.
he
He
puts it
can't.
back in.
He can't get out.
Yeah.
Because
but-
it has a lock on it, like
Yeah.
a luggage lock.
Okay.
Yeah, we padlock it because nothing else. keeps
I'm
him.
assuming you remove everything when you crate him,
Yeah.
just so that the collar
Yeah.
doesn't
Just
get
the
stuck.
collar.
Yeah. Okay. So clearly this kind of overstimulation thing, even present since 2 months. So this is obviously like more genetic stuff. I'm assuming from a breeder.
Yeah.
So, and like that stuff doesn't matter, because typically like people, when I get clients that get dogs from breeders, and they'll like go to the same breeder, and they're like, Jesse, I've had 5 dogs from this breeder, and then I got this dog, and I think they abused him or something. I'm like, no, it's just genetics.
Yeah.
Like, you just got a screwy dog.
Yeah.
So
Great.
chances are is when he was a puppy, he just had high drive, like prey drive, right? And because it's was unregulated for so long, it's just led to these other issues. So we can correct a lot of this stuff, okay? Now, if he has very strong prey drive, we can't kill the prey drive, but what we can do is we can harness it. So we have a controlled outlet. So then he goes, oh, I can get the thing that I want if I behave myself.
Yeah.
Kind of like with kids. Like I was raised old school, and if I threw a tantrum at the store, I was not going to get the toy.
Right.
But if I was well behaved, maybe I got the toy.
Yeah.
Right? Same thing with dogs. If they got good prey drive, because a lot of times we can, I don't want to say squash it, but through discipline, the dog just learns impulse control. And for the most part, they'll just correct themselves. Right? And they'll still exhibit prey drive when given permission. But when they're under obedience, they just naturally just avoid that stuff. Whereas a dog with drive, he'll be in obedience and he'll be listening, but you'll just see him very much tempted by that squirrel, that bird, or what have you, right? So that's a dog that just has high drive. Similar to like a working dog. Working dogs have high drive for things because they need them to want to do stuff so that they can get them to work, right?
Yeah.
So, and it happens, even though this guy wouldn't look at it as like a working dog, right? He could have the drive of a working type dog. So then once we get far enough into the training, I'm able to kind of assess better, like, yeah, this guy is we're gonna need to do controlled outlet because he just has that much drive, okay? That's nothing that we can so much take out the dog, okay? But things will be much, much better. So did they go over how we train and everything, like the methods we use?
Use the little collar thing.
Correct, the remote collar.
That's about it.
Okay. Have you done any training yourselves? Okay. Have you done remote collar?
All failure.
What'd you say?
Have you done remote collar?
No,
tra-
we
Okay.
haven't done remote collar.
Have you done
We were
prong
too
collar?
afraid to do that without
Okay.
knowing what we were doing. No, I did a $25 Amazon. It went.
That was an anti-bark.
Okay, sure.
He laughed at it. Like, he was like learning how to make it work. He's like, so if I
That's
do this-
funny.
But it was like a vibrating thing.
Okay.
And
But his barking started on day
Day
one
one.
of being home.
Sure,
Like,
yeah.
And our old dog,
just wasn't a barker. We didn't know that was
Yeah.
a thing.
yeah.
And like you see right now how he keeps moving around and stuff?
Yeah.
That's overstimulation. Okay. May I see your dog? May I
Yeah,
see
yeah.
Leash?
Yeah.
I'm not going to do much, but. Does he have a regular collar?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm going to swap through. So one thing, if you guys don't know, is that harnesses actually promote reactivity.
Okay.
Okay. So the reason is, so he's very resistant to pressure. There we go. So the reason is, when we put a harness on a dog, it puts the pressure at the front of their chest, which
Yeah.
creates frustration, okay?
Okay.
Many, many years ago, when I was younger and skinnier, I did protection training, which is where we train a dog to be aggressive on command towards people.
Okay.
And one of the things that we do is we put the dog on a harness because we want nothing inhibiting the throat. Because if the dog's lunging at a person or the person that's helping us train, the antagonist, if you will, there we go. I don't want them to lunge and then get caught on the leash. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So we put the leash on them, on the harness, we pull back, which creates tension on the chest. The person continues to act suspicious, okay? Eventually the dog starts to look, they start to growl, maybe bark, and we would praise them. Good, right? And eventually the person starts to act threatening, and then the dog starts to lunge, and we pull back to create that frustration because they can't get to the person that's antagonizing, right? And eventually they'll start to bite, and then we release, and that rewards the biting attempt. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So when people put harnesses on dogs, they're putting frustration on the dog's chest. Whenever the dog sees a squirrel, a rabbit, a bird, a person, frustration is kicking in. He can't get to what he wants, he starts to bark. Just like with kids. The kid wants a toy in a toy store, they start to throw a tantrum because they want that thing, they can't have it. Does that make sense? So,
But I will say, he doesn't bark so much outside, like on a walk, if he's being prevented from
Okay.
getting access to some dog on the sidewalk.
okay.
it's,
It's more in our
he
kitchen. like-
might bark some there, but the real thing is like,
So your reactivity is inside more so than outside.
It's
What
both,
he-
but inside, like I said, it's like a constant TV of squirrels and birds, and like, it's like, it never ends for him.
Mm-hmm.
And even if they're not there, he's like, one's about to be there. Do you know
Sure,
what I
sure.
mean?
Yeah, he knows. He knows. A new one's gonna show up. I
and
gotcha.
if he were free, he'd patrol all around the house, looking out the windows, and all that kind
Gotcha.
of stuff.
Okay.
Like
But-
a caged tiger.
Yes.
You know, he might, if we're preventing him from getting access to a dog who's come pretty close, he might bark a little, but he's also going to be lunging and leaping and writhing, and he might be kind of like doing that frustrated, moaning kind of
Yes.
type
Yes.
thing, you know.
So all that is considered reactivity. Reactivity is like a blanket term. So reactivity doesn't mean a dog is aggressive.
Yeah.
Reactivity means they're frustrated and they're lunging and barking, writhing,
Yeah.
all that stuff, right? Because sometimes people, like yesterday I did a consult, and the guy goes, I don't get it, Jesse, my dog is reactive on leash, and he was a German Shepherd, we saw it, it was a big bark, very, very reactive, but off leash she's social. Yeah, I know, people always go like, I don't get it. So there's 4 responses to danger, fight, flight, avoid, submission. The first 2 is fight or flight, okay? If a dog is on leash, which one of those is removed?
Fight.
Not fight.
Oh, flight. They can't
Flight.
get away.
Yes, the dog can get away. So that leaves fight response. That's the next first thing the dog's going to go to. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I told him, I was like, when your dog is off leash, your dog has the ability to run if he senses danger, which helps him relax, which is why he can be social off leash. Does that make sense? But so just because his dog is reactive on leash doesn't mean his dog is actually aggressive. Okay.
Yeah, I get that. I also feel like we got him January 15th, like last year, you know, just because that's how the timing worked out with the breeder. Not
Sure.
a great, fun puppy time in
Very
Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like I maybe took too much to heart the like, don't let him socialize with another dog, you know, before he's X months old, and this shot and that shot and all that, and also we would let him go to the bathroom in the yard a lot too. That I felt like when he did start socializing with dogs, it was like he'd been prevented so much that he was so bananas to socialize that like that was the problem. And I even feel like today it's like he doesn't, it's like now he's so much, you know,
That
of
nobody
a
wants to
response
say hi to him.
Yeah.
that you just don't want to like visit that on somebody. But at the same time, I just feel like it's not that he wants to hurt some other dog. He wants to socialize, but because he's so ridiculous, you know, we prevent it, which sort of makes it worse.
It becomes a feedback loop.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's super common. Like when I get dogs that are reactive, like I get clients that live in high rises and stuff like that.
Yeah, you're
Going
like
on the elevator,
You're,
there's-
you're like,
yeah,
you're like,
I know.
You're that person. It's like a nightmare
Yeah.
for the building. Yeah.
Yeah, you know, I had a client, she used to go up and down 27 flights of stairs because her dog was dog reactive.
Oh.
She couldn't take the elevator. Yeah.
27.
Yeah, and she used to go out like at 2 o'clock in the morning, like
Right.
these really, you know, because the dog was so reactive. Because she lived right on Lincoln, where you're in front of the park,
Yeah.
right? There's a high rise that's on the corner. That's where she lived.
Yeah.
So she's like, yeah, Jesse's like, life is, and she had already had like 2 previous board and trains, and both failed. And then I remember where I was actually at my other job at the time. I worked on boats, and then she called me. And she just like her life story on the phone,
yeah.
and I remember just sitting there listening. That's back
Yeah.
when I didn't have an assistant, you know. But yeah, so yeah, the reactivity doesn't mean a dog's aggressive. It can also be just frustration.
Yeah.
And I think even regardless if he had socialized them, he would still be the same. His manners might be better in terms
Yeah.
of socialization.
Okay.
Because dogs correct their puppies as young as 3 to 4 weeks. Okay, they teach them, like if a puppy is annoying the mom, and she wants to stop that, she'd nip the puppy, and the puppy would yelp and probably walk away, and then she'd go on with life, and the puppy would learn, don't harass mom. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But that's what teaches them rules and regulations.
Yeah.
And the issue is when we get puppies at 2 months, typically, people aren't doing that with their dogs. You know, they're not nipping and biting, so to speak.
Right.
The discipline that we try is typically no.
Yeah.
Put the puppy in a crate, turn your back to the puppy, ignore the puppy, right? Redirect the puppy with the toy,
Yeah.
but nothing says don't do that.
Yeah.
And things start to get worse from there, right? Because another dog, even a dog that doesn't know the puppy, would be like, yeah, you're not going to do that. Boom.
Yeah.
Doesn't make the dog aggressive. That's called a correction, you know? It's just how dogs communicate. They're mouth-based creatures. But as humans, we're taught that that's wrong, that it's abusive and all that stuff, right? And I go, no. I'm like, if you're doing it correctly, replicating or doing your best to use consequence that would replicate like a dog bite to stop or deter a behavior, that is fine. When you're doing it with malintent
Yeah.
or anger,
Yeah.
yes, that's where things start to become a problem, right? Because you know, maybe you've seen this too, like with people with their dogs, or a dog might snap at a dog, and they're like, oh, that's just a correction, don't worry about it, right? But then if a human tries to correct a dog using an aversive, it's all of a sudden abusive.
Right.
You know, it's a whole weird thing in the dog training world, because there's two fronts. There's the positive only, which is treats, positive reinforcement, praise, which we use for puppies under 6 months. We still use it in training adult dogs, but I just don't use it a whole lot. And then there's trainers like myself that use everything that's available to us. We have the positive punishment, which is like tools like the remote collar or the prong collar, but we also use positive reinforcement if I think it's going to be beneficial, okay? More often than not, when a puppy hits 6 months, positive reinforcement goes out the window. Because, so think of, you guys have kids, right?
Yeah.
Think of 6 months as terrible two's brain, teenager body. At a year, we have teenager brain, adult body. At 2 years, you have adult dog. Does it make sense? So usually around 6 months, dogs actually start to treat the puppies as adult dogs. Okay, but people are still typically babying the puppies because they're thinking a puppy's like a newborn,
Yeah.
which is incorrect, right? So like a newborn, for example, my aunt, she had twins, and like, I don't know, 3 to 4 months, whatever, she was carrying one of the babies and she had earrings on, and the baby grabbed the earring and ripped it, okay? She was very upset, she was very mad, but she didn't spank the baby. She didn't do anything because she's like, that's my fault
Yeah.
because my baby doesn't have motor skills.
Right.
But remember, puppies as young as 3 to 4 weeks are being corrected by other puppies and the mom. So that's what ends up happening is once the puppy is put into a home, they're not having that discipline anymore, and they just start to go haywire. Most of the stuff that I see is problems that developed over the course of time because nothing was being done. Because people are told it's bad.
Right.
Does that make sense? So it's very counterintuitive. And at some point, maybe they find me or a trainer like me, and then they go, I need something different because everything else isn't working. Okay? So here you can see how he's starting to relax, but you can still, like this little fidget here, that's the overstimulation. Okay? So I'm countering his brain right now. So it took me like a minute in the beginning. You saw how he just kept resisting, right? So when I was pushing down, he was literally pushing his butt up against me. So that's when I said he's resistant to pressure. Probably because he has not either one, had it before, or two, I'm unfamiliar to him. So he's like, I don't know who you are, but I'm not just going to accept you putting pressure on me, okay? But eventually he gave it to me, and he sat for a good while, right? Then he laid down, and then after about 30 seconds of laying down, he got up again, and you saw me reposition him. And then he sat down a little bit less time before going into the down position, right? So here, I'm not telling him to sit, okay? What do you think I'm telling him?
Be calm.
Relax, be calm. But I'm using this as a reference point, okay? So there are different forms of pressure. We have leash pressure. So you use your leash to direct your dog by pulling them, right? We have physical pressure. We have remote pressure, which would be like the training tool. If you're using a prong collar, you have prong pressure. In our world, we have peer pressure, if you remember that term, right? Let's say you guys are on the expressway. You ever had someone drive really close to your rear end, right? And they're putting pressure, what we call spatial pressure, on you to motivate you to do something. Either change lanes, speed up, or do something, right? Whether or not they get that response is a totally different thing, but they're using spatial pressure to make you feel uncomfortable, right? So same thing here. I'm putting pressure on him, and it's gradually increasing, but the moment he gives me what I'm looking for, everything stops. And it's the same theory for remote collar training. Okay, when people see these tools or hear these tools, they usually think we're just like slamming the dog, you know, like max it out and make him yelp and stuff like that, and it's really not the case. Okay.
We don't have any concern about that.
Okay.
We're not, like,
but just so you know.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So have you guys ever been to a physical therapist or a chiropractor?
yeah.
Have you ever had the TENS unit? that moves the muscles.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's an e-collar.
The stem.
Yes,
Yeah, yeah.
the stim machine.
Yeah.
That's a remote collar. Okay. So a lot of people, when they hear electric collar, they think electricity,
Yeah.
right? Like an electric chair. And I go, no, it's literally like it's a muscle contraction like a TENS unit. Okay. And when you would undergo the stim therapy, they'd probably tell you when it becomes too much, let us know.
Right.
Right. And then they would dial it down. And they would go, how does that feel? And you go, I can do that. And you go, okay, great. We're gonna let it do its work now, right? Same thing for the dog. We start low, we work our way up, okay? And what I'm trying to find is a number low enough that he can feel it and think through it, process it, like how do I turn this off? But then high enough that he respects it, right? Because if he doesn't respect it, you're gonna be forever, oh, there's the frustration mark. You're gonna forever be in the same position. You're never gonna make progress. Does that make sense? So when we have these problem behaviors, the frustration barking like you just saw, the demand barking, looking out the window with the prey drive and stuff like that, right? Is people typically focus on the problem. This is what we want to fix. And they go, me too, I want to fix that too. But we don't just come in targeting the problem. The barking isn't the problem, it's the symptom of a problem,
Yeah.
right? What's the problem? What's the root?
Well, usually he's saying, open the door, let me out, or get me a treat, or get me water. He's asking for
So
something.
that's what he's communicating, right? But what's the behavioral?
It's like he's impatient, you know, I would
Yeah.
want something
It's-
like right this second.
Yeah, it's the overstimulation.
Yeah.
Why do you call that overstimulation? I just, like, I
Because
wouldn't-
overstimulation is the simplest term, and then everything else is an outlet of it. Does that make sense?
Okay.
It's like a kid constantly asking for attention, right? That's a symptom of something, but it comes out as asking for attention.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? So same thing here. Overstimulation is the need to do something. Because he needs to do something, he's going to say, hey, let me outside. Hey, play with me. Does that make sense? So dogs are very simple creatures. Humans overcomplicate things. Okay? The key behaviors that we typically deal with are overstimulation, it's the most common, anxiety, fear, nervousness, aggression. I think that's the only 5 that any dog that I see will be some kind of mixture of or one of those things. Does that make sense? But humans tend to stack all these other things on, and I go, that's too complicated. Dogs don't do that. Okay? You're correct in the description, but the root cause is overstimulation. Okay? Because now, if I get a dog in this state, and he's in this state 99% of the time, I'm not going to get the other problems.
Right.
Does that make sense? Because
Yeah.
now he's in a calm state, and he's in a calm state 99% of the time. So he's not going to need something to do all the time. And this is what I try to get people to recognize. Because a lot of times when clients come, they look at obedience to resolve the problem, but a lot of times the problem is a behavioral issue. The behavioral issue here, of course, is the overstimulation, which can then possibly become like anxiety. Okay? Does that make sense? So the way we accomplish this is obedience is a part of it, but obedience isn't really why he's getting better. It's the discipline behind the obedience. Okay?
I don't know what that means,
So-
but yeah.
The remote collar, right? The remote collar I want you to think of as a bite on a button. Okay?
It's a what?
It's a bite on a button.
A bite on a button?
Yeah.
Oh, from a mom dog.
Correct.
Yeah.
That's how I like to term it to people, right? So it's a TENS unit, but I like to phrase it as a bite on a button in terms of how the dog interprets it, okay? So the first thing we always teach is heel, which is walking on a leash, okay? Because leash pulling and leash reactivity are the 2 most common things that I deal with, okay?
Yeah, I mean, the harness did help for a time.
Mhm.
I tried doing all that, you know, I don't know, one way of doing it, and it wasn't working. And
Mhm.
Cora said to me, "Just use the harness." He doesn't pull it. Now he kind of pulls on the harness. Does he pull you?
Yeah.
Fine with that.
So with the heel, it allows us to layer in the e-collar in a non-confrontational manner, right? So, and we're outside of the problem being the barking, okay? And we start to teach him how to focus. So our style of heel is very strict. If you take 5 steps, he takes 5 steps. You take 3 steps, he takes 3 steps. You take 1, he takes 1. When you stop, he automatically sits. I don't care what the environment is, Okay, and then people go like, wow, that sounds very complicated. It is super simple. I get it done within like 15 to 20 minutes. Okay.
Well, we have no doubt that you can make him do anything.
Yeah, our
It
problem
really
is,
all
can
comes
we-
down to.
Yes.
We did a
like,
whole
Yes.
board and train, we
Yeah.
did,
Yes.
and he was great
You'll get
for
it done.
a minute.
You'll get it done. You just have to do the homework. Okay. And I'll describe what holds people
We
back
can
the
do
most.
homework. I think we're very disciplined people. I think the hard part is like all the subtle art of the whole thing.
It's very
like
simple.
the perfect timing, because what he's really doing is
Timing doesn't matter.
and it just it's like overwhelming.
Yes. So in 2020, what happened?
The world shut down.
Yeah. Okay.
Dogs had a renaissance. Best thing that ever happened.
Yeah. So I didn't start with the facility. I started home to home back in 2010. In 2019, I expanded to a brick and mortar facility in Logan Square.
Oh,
September of, okay,
Right.
is when I officially opened my doors. In March of 2020, 6 months later, the world shut down.
Yeah.
And I had a $30,000 overhead every month because I had expanded 6 months prior. Okay. So I'm going, I don't want to lose my business. I don't want to lose 10 years of hard work. So I go, I know I can train dogs without even touching them. I just need people to believe me. And we were getting calls. And I was like, trust me, I can do it. They're like, no. If you're the trainer, like, how am I going to train a dog if you don't train it? I'm like, I don't need to touch the dog. It's all you. So nobody will believe me. And then fast forward, I got a client in Lincoln Park, who ended up actually being a neighbor later on because I moved into the area. She was my first post-COVID client. And her dog had dislocated her husband's shoulder 3 times in 2 years and sent him to the ER 2 times. He was a 90-pound, super friendly dog who pulled like heck. Okay? So they're like, Jesse, we got to do something. So they're like, we believe you. We'll be your first client.
Yeah.
Right? So I showed up, did the training. They did the e-collar and all that stuff. Came back the second week. A week later, like, Jesse, 180. 180. Okay? So they did a testimonial video, and I posted that testimonial video up. And then after that, calls started coming in. Okay, so because of COVID, it pushed me to kind of modify where I don't touch the dog. I don't touch the dog
Yeah,
99.9% of
that's
the time. It's all the owner.
I mean, I think the board and train we did worked. I mean, they were great, but the transfer,
To us. was-
Yes.
from them to us was just like,
And that's another thing. That's a separate conversation. Yeah, but you need stuff that's going to work.
Yeah,
Okay, most of the methods that are popular and the most common that you'll come across actually don't work. They're just the easiest to swallow.
yeah.
Does that make sense? If you came to a person, let's say the first trainer, and they're like, yeah, we're gonna use positive and clicker and all that stuff. We're gonna fix the problem with this. You're like, using positive things to fix my dog's problem? Sign me up.
Yeah.
we're
Right.
indifferent on all
Yeah,
that stuff. We're
'cause
not
you've had that
a normal
experience.
person.
We had
We're-
it.
Yes,
yeah.
but that's typically what draws people,
Yeah,
right? I'm usually a last resort or the resort after. Like, I've had clients have like 5 positive reinforcement trainers. I had a guy, he spent 10 grand on 5 different trainers. And I'm like, how do you keep getting duped into it? And he's like, it's always like a new thing, but it's the same sales pitch, you
Yeah.
know? So then, so now training is so much simpler than everything makes it out to be. Remember what I said earlier. Dogs are simple, humans make it complicated. Then that includes some dog trainers, okay? I have cut out all the excess stuff that does not matter, okay? And I've simplified it to a very simple methodology that we stack on each week, but you're gonna get progress after day 1, okay? The only time I don't get a client that gets progress is they're uncomfortable with increasing the level of the collar, okay? Every case is
Don't care
different.
about that.
So,
we just don't hurt.
yeah, I understand.
I
So,
mean, I'd rather give him away than
if he's
us
hurt a
miss-
little bit, it's okay.
I just mean, we just don't wanna not know how to use it.
There
Yes.
is no way that someone's in Jesse's business that where like all they do is hurt dogs. It's just not. So we have no.
sure.
concern.
Yeah, and good point, yes. I've told that to people before. I was like, I would think that I wouldn't be here after 15 years if I was doing something wrong.
Right.
Like, at some point, it's gonna catch up to you,
Well,
right?
plus,
Yeah.
our sister-in-law recommended you, she's like, I don't know how to describe it, but she's up here.
Hmm.
And like,
If you would have told me 5 years ago she was using an e-collar, I would have told you you're crazy.
Mhm.
Like, she's that, like,
Sure.
the concept would even be like disgusting to her. And she is like, it totally turned my dog's life around. I'm like, okay.
Yes. So discipline is healthy. It's
Yeah,
good.
we're all good with it.
Yes. We just need to know how to do it correctly.
Yes.
That's the problem.
Yes. Now, so it's heel for the first class. I coach you through everything. Okay. Then I go, here's your homework, rinse and repeat for a week. Okay. You come back the following week. You give me feedback. Jesse, he's calmer in the house, 50% calmer, 20% calmer, 80% calmer, 0% calmer. Okay. Whatever that feedback is now determines the second class. Okay. Which is heel part 2. I make a few tweaks, give you some things to do, rinse and repeat for a week. I'll see you in a week. You come back class 3. Hey, Jesse, 180, we're still the same. And I go, okay, no problem. Because if it's the same, what it means is, so we have direct and indirect approaches to correct behavior, okay? Indirect is I'm using the concept of heel and discipline to settle the brain to see if it impacts them inside. Okay, so earlier when I mentioned I've had clients do one class and the dog stops chewing within the first week, that's because of indirect discipline. We're not targeting the problem. We're doing something over here that may address the problem, okay? If that doesn't work, I go, no problem. You've done the foundation. Now we can start addressing the problem directly, which is correcting the behavior itself, right? So like if he was jumping on another dog and they didn't like it and they would nip at him, that's a direct correction for the behavior of jumping. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you first try indirect and then
Yes,
get direct.
yes. Because we also need to make sure the dog understands the collar, right? So e-collar is human technology that we've adapted to dog training, right? So they're not meant to have their muscles contracted, okay? But through proper conditioning, they learn to understand what it's communicating. So by the third class, you've done the foundation that we can start targeting other things. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I get clients that they do their own training, and they're just like remoting the dog. Like I had a case, the dog was human reactive. So when she would pass by people, he would lunge at them. So she goes, dangerous behavior, right? She put an e-collar on her dog and she's blasting him at 100 every time he did that. So then she finds me through client referral. And because I kept hearing the dog scream, and I'm like, what are you doing right now? And she's like, well, it's because he's human reactive, so I'm correcting him. I'm like, where are you correcting him at? She's like, I'm at 100. I'm like, drop that down. I was like, your dog has no idea what's happening right now, and you're building more frustration, right? So we ended up at around 48 after figuring out the levels, and I told her, do your homework, don't do what you were doing before. She came back the second week, and she's like, everything went away. And I go, yes. I was like, because since you were just correcting your dog without conditioning him, he did not know why it was happening, which was creating more frustration.
That would be my biggest fear in all this.
Yeah.
Like, again, just,
Yeah.
this is good. And I will say,
Normally can't
we're,
see.
because of just his, he's not obedient and he's not under control and all that, he does not get the exercise that we know
Sure, yeah.
we benefit from.
Yeah.
I mean, our old dog, we took to Oz Park, which is 2 blocks from our house.
Yep.
All the time until he started running off his ligaments and, this guy, I'd be, I don't know what would happen if we let him off leash there.
Yeah. Probably chase something and maybe not come back.
Never come
Yeah.
back.
Yeah, just something bad would happen to him.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Because
so
he's just out of control.
it's funny that you say Oz Park. So like during
You
COVID,
know, you go there.
Yes.
Yeah, that's like your.
yeah, because
Field.
Oz Park is the busiest park in Chicago.
amazing.
So I had a client, her daughter. So my client was a judge. Her daughter worked for the city of Chicago, and she did studies on all the parks to see how people were using them. And she said this is the busiest park,
It's hard to believe.
statistically
because-
speaking. You got baseball games,
There's
you got
always
tennis
people
games.
there.
Yep.
Big playground.
Yeah, so when people would hear like you're training out of the park at Oz, I'm like, yeah, and they're like, and it works. I go, well, yeah, and like you just have to follow
Do
the
people
instructions.
still like run their dogs on the field?
Yes,
like,
and that little by the
off
baseball,
times?
Yeah,
baseball lot.
Yeah.
It's right now because of the playground is under construction. I know there's like a fence and stuff, so it's kind of shifted a bit,
Yeah.
which I need to pass by because we'll be moving to Oz Park by the end of this month or early June. We're just trying to wait for the rainy season to pass.
Yeah,
Because
it is a mud fest.
Oz Park floods. People don't know that. So like, once it rains there, if it's a heavy rain, we can't go back for like a few days.
It's bad, yeah.
So it's right now, it's too much work for the admin to have to constantly move people. So we've learned to just wait till the rainy season is done.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's where we train, you know. And it, again, as long as the owner is following the instructions, we get the results. The only time that it's difficult, or like we'll be limited in how much we can accomplish is it's a severe case. And it's almost always aggression.
Yeah.
You know, my specialty is aggression. That's how I built my career. And I get like 1 to 3 dogs a year that are just those like very rare instances. Most of my dogs are this, right?
Yeah.
So I'm not worried about him. Like you can already see like he's settling here, and I'm not even doing much with him.
Yeah.
Now I understand we don't have the stimulation of stuff, but even with that stuff around, like I would have the ability to settle him. I just might have to do a little bit more work in that case. Okay. So is what I'm saying so far making sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, again, just comes down to like, you know, will we be able to do it?
Yeah.
That's the whole.
So I always tell my clients I can only take you as far as you're willing to go, right? Every case is different. I don't know what it's going to be. I've had cases where you look at them and you're like, wow, this is going to be bad, right? And it's super easy. And I get cases where you think it's going to be like super easy and it's very difficult. I've just learned not to
Great.
set,
That's gonna be us.
you know.
Yeah.
So let's say we're working with Smokey. I wanted to say Finn from the other dog. Smokey. And he ends up being very physically resilient to the collar. Okay. He might have a number of 80 out of 127. Okay. Because we have increments of 1. So what ends up happening is the owner goes, I'm at 80 out of 127. That's 2/3 of the power. So logic starts to kick in and they can't believe it. And then they start to feel bad. So then they come back. I'm like, how is it this week? Oh, it was terrible, Jesse. I'm like, well, how high did you go? That's always my first question. And
Yeah.
they'll go like 30. And I go, you're 50 levels too shy
Yeah.
of where we need to be. Does that make sense? I'm not going to make progress there because the dog needs 80.
Yeah.
Okay. Size, breed, age, fur, none of that stuff matters.
Yeah.
Every case is different.
Yeah.
I have 2 dogs here, a German Shepherd and a Golden Retriever, about the same age. They're about a year, same size. The Golden Retriever, he's like at an 80, okay? And he is unfazed by it. He takes it like a champ. He's like, sure, what do you need me to do? The German Shepherd is like at a 20, maybe 25. She is super sensitive to the collar. Very much different, right? But I help you figure all that out.
Yeah.
Everything makes sense logically. It's just the emotional component that people have difficulty with. So I don't come in at 80. I come in low at 15.
Yeah.
And we work our way up. And you will see the difference between these low settings and the higher settings where you're like, yeah, when I'm at 20, like, he just does not care. But the moment I hit 80, he is super obedient. And he's very reliable. I go, right, because he's learning you're serious. You have to be serious if you want him to listen, okay? The other thing about dog training is that people typically get dogs for companionship, right? To share their affection and share their home with and all that stuff. But friends don't tell friends what to do, right? That's an authority relationship.
Right.
That's a boss to employee, teacher to student, cop to civilian, leader to subordinate, right? That's really the relationship here. So if we're practicing companionship and buddyship 99% of the time, well, the dog's not going to listen. Does that make sense? So I'm not saying you can never have companionship with your dog, but we also have to shift that dynamic. Otherwise, you're not going to get anywhere. You know, kind of like with kids.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't, you know, I don't think we lavish him with attention or anything like that. And
I'd say at bedtime. Outside of that, he's a nightmare. I mean,
That's probably with the Jersey. You're like,
he's
I don't want
barking
to.
constantly. Like,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
don't want to pet him. I don't even want to look at him.
Yeah.
But at bedtime, he like snuggles right in. We
Mm-hmm.
hang out for 20 minutes and then we put him in his crate.
Do you see this passiveness, but
Yeah.
the alert state? So this is what I call passive alert. This is funny. He's a cute dog. I like him. He throws me off because I have a Smokey that's actually also a doodle,
Oh, that's funny.
but he's gray.
Ah.
So when I was thinking Smokey, I was expecting a gray dog, and then
Yeah,
I
yeah.
saw. But it's funny because when he was a pup, he was actually black gray, and then once he matured, he's now white gray.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's very
I
interesting.
think he'll get more white, but
So in terms of like cost and length of program and everything, it all comes down to what you're trying to achieve. Okay, so we have 3, 6, 9, and 12 week in-person programs, 1 hour a week, once a week. okay? At minimum, I would put you at 6. If you want more control or the ability to do more with Smokey, then the program is longer, okay? I would anticipate, if you did 6, the first 2 classes, like I said, are heel, okay? So it's 2 classes there. Third class, potentially, if we're still struggling with behaviors in the home or what have you, that's the third class. I'm teaching you how to discipline your dog for those behaviors, okay? The fourth class, I recommend recall. Come when called.
Yeah.
Recall will afford you so much more freedom with Smokey
Yeah.
because now you're not worried about your dog taking off on you, okay? The fifth class, most likely stationary control. So like that's a placemat right there. You can see on the TV here, on the top right corner, there's dogs on beds just laying down, right? That's stationary control, okay? It's a part of the daycare routine. So if I tell a dog to place, they won't move for an hour, 30 minutes, 3 hours, whatever that time is, which is great for a dog like Smokey because he needs to be told to sit still. Because typically people think of training outside the home, right? But then they let the dog do whatever they want inside the home. And I go, you have to have control in both contexts, albeit it will be less in the home because we're not going to have the dog laying there all day doing nothing, right? But it teaches him structure within the home as well, okay? The sixth class I would look at as a variable. If you're still struggling with the behaviors in the home, maybe you're struggling with recall or something, you want to do a review, that would be the sixth class, okay? If you did like a 9-class course, it allows me to advance your training to a higher level, okay? So there's 6 commands: sit, stay, down, come, place, heel. All those commands are meant to be functional. They're meant to be applied in life so you can do things with Smokey, okay? I think nowadays, these things are looked at as kind of training tricks that dogs do for treats, right? Which, sure, they can, but they're meant to be functional.
Yeah.
Paw, I don't care about. Rollover, I don't care about. I need things that are serve me function so I can live my life with my dog, okay? In a 12-week program, so 9-week is typically we build heel recall to an off-leash level, and then when a client does a 12-class program, they're saying, I want all 6 commands built to an off-leash level. Does that make sense? If you did 9, it also just gives us more of a buffer in terms of the behavior stuff. I don't think it's going to be a problem, but sometimes clients just like having that extra buffer, and it's like, okay, my dog's doing great. I just want as much obedience as I can get and as much control that affords me off-leash reliability. Then we do that instead, okay? But at minimum, I would suggest 6. Sometimes I'm met with skepticism because they're like, 6 classes and you're going to change the dog? I go, yes, because it's involving discipline. Most training doesn't involve discipline, right? It involves just positive and reinforce the things that you want, but there's nothing that says to correct the things you don't want.
Yeah.
And that's how that stuff works. Like I was raised old school, I was spanked. And because of that, I'm a disciplined personality type. And it's funny because I'm the oldest of 4 kids. My younger brothers and sisters are not as disciplined growing up, and it shows. I think it's the most interesting thing. I'm a behaviorist, like because of dogs, but also with humans, I see similar things, And I tell clients, when you practice structured discipline and leadership with your dog, you're going to get that return to get a structured, disciplined dog. But when it's do what you want, when you want, however you want, wherever you want, now you get a dog that just does that instead, right? And people tend to want that and then control in these very specific moments. And I go, it doesn't work that way because your dog is always doing what they want majority of the time.
Yeah.
You need to practice more. I tell you what to do and I give you permission to be a dog and play and stuff. And now when you need your obedience to actually work, like let's say he's chasing a squirrel and the squirrel runs into the street, which has happened to clients, and I recall my dog, he's not going to second guess it. He's just going to do it because he's like, I just listen all the time. Does that make sense?
It sounds good.
So, question on any of that stuff. What I recommend for the collar is I would put Smokey on the black edition, okay? It's meant for a 70-pound dog and over. It's perfectly safe to use for him. I could put on my 8-pound Chihuahua, it's perfectly fine.
Right.
The reason why I say to do so is because I don't know how high his prey drive is gonna be, okay? So, I'd rather you have it and then not need it than need it and not have it, or you're like, crap. So I had a client, and I didn't know this. She got her dog in the wintertime from a rescue. And it wasn't a prey-driven breed, okay? We trained the dog during the wintertime, everything's good. Come spring, summer, she's calling me like, Jesse, this dog is a lunatic. And I was like, what's going on? She's like, squirrels. And she lived in Lakeview, like a block away from the lakefront.
They're everywhere.
Yes. So then we go, and she was on the collar meant for a 70-pound dog and under, right? So a lower powered collar. And she's like, Jesse, I'm at 127, my dog's ignoring it. And the dog was literally looking at a squirrel, like with the contraction, did not care. And I was like, I couldn't predict because we didn't know the dog had that strong of a prey drive. She got the dog in the wintertime where there was no animals, right? So then she had to go and buy a $350 collar or whatever, and then spend another 300 some bucks, and then that curbed the problem. Okay, so since I know that there's that prey drive, even though he's like what, a 35-ish pound dog, drive will override even for smaller dogs. Okay. The nice thing about the Black Edition too is it's the best system that they have. It's a 1 mile range, fully waterproof system, both the transmitter and the receiver. Plus, it's a curved collar. It's circular, so it tucks against the neck. Whereas the old or the other models are these big boxes. Okay,
Yeah.
so people also like the fact that it's just more aesthetically pleasing to look at. But that's what I would suggest. So this way, we're not sitting there going, he's got a lot of drive and we can't override it.
And the whole drive thing, you're deducing from what we're telling you about how he acts in the kitchen and that kind of, okay.
Yeah. I would hate to start the training and then we get to the point where like you're struggling and I go, crap, I went with a lower powered collar, not thinking it was going to be, I've just learned to just assume from the get-go so that there's no breaks in the training. Because I've had clients like on their own, I'll give them options, but I'll tell them, I really suggest this one. And they'll go for the other one because it's typically cheaper. And then we get to the point of training and then it's not working. So, okay. And again, I could put on my 8-pound Chihuahua. It means we get more from less. It's higher output. So like 50 on the lower powered collar might be 25 on the higher powered collar.
Okay.
You see that?
Yeah.
So that's really all it means. And the other thing that I always tell my clients is we want to factor in emergency situations. Throughout 15 years of training dogs, I've had a handful of them take off on owners because of fireworks. They get spooked. They're at the park. They're off leash. It's October. They're not expecting a firework. There were fireworks last night over here. Was there something going on?
Really?
Yeah.
Oh.
Well, we heard of my pit hates fireworks, and we're running him out to go potty. She started shaking, and I was like, "Is there a storm coming?" Because she usually does it before storms. And the moment we get outside, I saw all the fireworks popping. So maybe just a south side thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, fireworks. And almost always when they've taken off, when the dog's taken off, that's not obedience. That's fear flight mode.
Yeah.
That's the dog scared of the loud sound. Is that the client has had to override the fear flight response with a maxed out collar continuous, which is the harshest correction you can give. So you're theoretically making the dog more scared of running from you than they are running from the collar. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And a handful of times, but because they had the appropriate tool, they were able to override those situations, okay? So I tell my clients, I'm like, if you can get your dog to return or listen in those moments, everything else is easy peasy. Because life is, for the most part, pretty straightforward, okay? And I cover all that stuff, because that's really where training is super important, is when life throws something at you, and you're like, what do I do here, okay?
When you say waterproof, that means he could swim with it and stuff?
Yep, and then the remote is waterproof as well.
Well,
Yep. One of the most common questions that I get is, Jesse, when does the e-collar go away? In my book, when you need it, it doesn't. Okay, so if you're outside on a walk, you have it on. If he's going to be off leash, you'd have it on. If you're like at a restaurant with him and you want to take him with you or whatever, he'd have it on, because you can't account for life. Things happen, right? Inside the home, we want to move past it. Maybe in the beginning while we're training some stuff, working on behaviors or whatever, he's wearing it. But in time, because there's less stimuli in the home, you would move past it, okay? I do cover alternate means of correcting the dog for behaviors we don't want inside the home, because dogs do get collar smart, okay? It's nothing, I know you'll see stuff online that'll say like, trying to move past the collar. In my opinion, it's just BS, because dogs aren't dumb. You guys drive?
Yeah.
You go on the expressway? Do you go the speed limit?
no.
No. You see a squad car, what happens?
Yeah.
You slow down. You pass a squad car and it's clear, what happens?
Speed up.
You speed up. That's called opportunistic behavior. All animals do it, okay? So for the dog, if he knows that the collar is off, he may press boundaries. So in the home, we have alternate means of correcting the behavior. So the dog goes, you don't need the collar to correct me. You can correct me yourself. Does that make sense? So growing up, again, raised old school, if my mom always told me, wait till your dad gets home, right? And he did the discipline. And then when he was gone, what would happen? and misbehave because I know you're not going to do it.
Yeah.
I'm playing that, it's the opportunity. Like, I know I'll get spanked, but it won't be till later, right? Same thing here. So I teach you a number of things to have tools in the toolbox to stop the behavior, so that you're not sitting there with the collar on them all the time. Does that make sense? But outside, it's not that you're always using it. It's just present in case something happens.
Yeah.
And we want to think that, he is a living, breathing creature. He does have his own free will, right? Is one day, could be 2 years. And he goes, you know what happens if I don't come back to you, right?
Yeah.
Nope, you have to,
Yeah.
right? It's just natural, okay? But as long as you're following the instructions, you should not always be pressing the button. When I get clients that are always pressing the button, that tells me that they're too low in the collar.
Oh,
Okay?
Too what?
Too low.
low.
Yeah. When you're at the correct level, the dog wants less of it. So have you ever ran a red light before? Get a $100 ticket,
Yeah.
right? Let's say that $100 ticket was a $10,000 ticket.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You see that? You learned that you probably wouldn't even want to attempt that consequence.
Right.
Yeah.
A client of mine told me, I think it was in Switzerland, that fines are income based.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, that there was some story of some super rich guy and he was speeding or whatever and he got a ticket and then he was quite surprised to see that it wasn't just a $100 ticket. Yes. And I was like, yeah. I was like that will for sure deter a lot of behaviors. But $100 a ticket, you might gamble, right? But that also serves the government in a way because now they got that kind of recurring income there. You see how that works? Interesting, huh? So same thing for the dog. We want to find a level that's high enough that he goes, I really don't want that to happen again, but that's low enough that he can process it. Okay, and I help you figure it out. It's very logic-based. It's very intuitive. You just need to learn how to recognize it, and I'll get you there. Okay? Any other questions?
No, I think we should do the 6 at least.
Sure.
If we need more, we could get more, right?
Yes. Now, we don't prorate programs, just so you know. So if you do 6 and then buy 3, you would pay the respective costs of each program. So the way my schedule works is typically people are booked ahead of time, right? So then let's say you're on class 5, you're like, this is great. We want to advance this training, and you want to buy another 3. You'd most likely have to go back in line to reschedule the other 3 because I have a constant just influx of clients coming through, especially with the summertime coming. I get super busy. One thing you could also do, and I'm not sure if this is something that you're needing, but we have run a daycare boarding facility, is I have clients that will go longer programs because it's cheaper per class. But then if we get if they do a 12-class program and they only use 10 classes, and they're like, we're super happy, they'll convert the last 2 classes to credit. We'll prorate it according to the program, and then they just use it towards boarding or something. Okay, so they don't ever lose that
Boarding,
value.
overnight.
Correct.
On a trip and stuff like that.
Yeah. So today, it's Mondays are typically slower. We probably have 40 dogs today, but as you can see, it's fairly quiet. Dogs bark, but it's not 40 dogs barking.
Yeah.
Across the street, you'll hear dogs barking all day. Our neighbors here, all the CTA canine dogs that you might see, they go here. They go next door. Okay, they're all very well trained dogs, as you know. It is loud. So training is not the same as obedience, right? I'm sure those dogs have quite a few specialty skills that they're capable of doing,
Right.
but it's chaos. Okay, with being a behavior expert is what allows me to run a quiet kennel. Tuesdays through Thursdays are typically our busiest days. We have about anywhere between 60, maybe even 70 dogs. It's just as quiet. So if I can do it with that many dogs, you can do it with the one dog.
So you think.
Yeah.
It's really just a follow
What's the
through.
difference between the 6 and the 9 cost?
Cost-wise, I have to check my phone.
Because
I think
if
it's-
you can turn it into boarding, you might prefer to just do 9. It's not like we're gonna go away.
Yeah.
I gotta pull up my website. I feel like it's at around 500-ish
I feel
bucks.
like if you say 6, we would be idiots to do anything less than that.
Yeah, I would not do 3.
Well, because we live with this guy. He is.
And this is what I call lifetime training. I always tell my clients, so 6 week is $1,425. That's not including the collar, and it's $2,025 for a 9. And then the collar itself is around 340-ish with tax. They last for years. My first batch of e-collars lasted me 10 years before I had to replace them, okay? Most common thing that happens is the battery is a rechargeable lithium battery. It does give over time. We can swap it out for you for 35 bucks, or you go online, you can purchase one for 20 bucks and then do it yourself. It's pretty straightforward. Otherwise, yes, if it's a battery issue, correct. If it's another issue, it does come with a 1-year warranty. Within that time frame, you send it to Dog Show, they'll repair for you free of charge. After that warranty, you can call them up, you'll describe the problem. They'll say, yeah, you'll need to send it in. And they'll say it's gonna be 50 bucks or it's gonna be 80 bucks or whatever it is. So it's usually, because you're using it, you're dropping it, stuff like that. And what happens is sometimes the LED screen malfunctions, which isn't the biggest deal, because once you get used to it, you don't even really need to look at the numbers. Or it might mess with the internal stuff, and then it might affect the connection. So that, of course, you'd want to send in. But Dog Show, of course, give you a quote and let you know how much it's going to cost to repair. But yeah, those would be the prices. And in regards to whether you should start training while we're here or Oz Park, it doesn't matter, because clients are also concerned about that, or they have reactivity, and they're like, but Jesse, it's outside. I go, I know it is, but it doesn't matter because of how I train, okay? But if you like to be or have the experience of being at Oz Park while you're training, then you can just tell Tina, and then you would just pre-book for a future date. But it technically doesn't matter where we begin the training, whether it's here or the park, we'll still get everything resolved, okay?
I don't think it matters. I mean, it's more convenient at the park, but when does that start?
It should be end of the month, early June.
Oh, well,
Yeah, so probably like 2-3-ish more weeks, I'd say.
well,
When you do it at the park, is it with like lots of people?
Just the people that are there. No, it's always one-on-one.
Oh, it's always one-on-one?
It's always one-on-one, yes. You're just in life.
in Oz Park, not here.
Yeah. Some clients like to have the first class here, and then they'll do the rest at Oz Park. It's rare, but it can happen where, like, I had a case that was super severe last year, and we had the first class at Oz Park, and the dog was like leash reactive with dogs 200 feet away. It was ridiculous. So then the second class, I said, you know what, let's have it here. We had it here, and in the third class, we went back to the park, just so that the owner could focus more. 'Cause
Maybe
it's
one class here.
Yeah, I mean,
completely up to you.
yeah.
Because it could be stressful. Your dog's barking, you're sitting there like, I'm used to it. I've been doing this for so long, I'm used to it. But, the clients, like, it can be overwhelming sometimes. Yeah. Any other questions?
No, so you want to do the 9 and maybe convert the last 3 if it's not necessary? And
Sure.
get the,
Yep.
You know.
In regards to boarding and stuff, just as FYI, dogs that have trained with us and have done a qualifying program, which even if we ended up with 6, he would qualify. They're not required to come to daycare to use our boarding services. Okay, so a lot of daycares, it's their requirement. Your dog comes at least, I think for most places, 2 to 3 times in order to board with them.
Okay.
For us, if they trained, we welcome all dogs, because I got clients like in St. Charles,
Okay.
Skokie, Winnetka, like
So
they're not going to
daycare's
come
hard.
here. Exactly. But they train with us.
Okay.
Not a problem. Clients that have not trained with us have to bring their dogs once a week in order to use our boarding services.
Okay.
That allows us to keep them in our regular structure. We used to be a little more lenient on it, but then when they would come back and we didn't see them for months, they would like destroy things. So then I started going, nope, we need to see you at least once a week, which is still lenient compared to other places. But yeah, all we would need to do is like have a fecal or whatever. And then I always suggest that clients do our eval process, which is a 3-day daycare process, just to get him comfortable with here. Because it's stressful when a dog is just dropped off in an unfamiliar environment. So having the eval, they don't have to be consecutive. I've had clients do 1 day, 1 week, 1 day, another week. As long as they've done at least 2, they're welcome to just come in and board, just so that they're not freaked out. Okay, they've had a few experiences of being dropped off and then being picked up later on, which helps them relax. Okay, all the training is reinforced here. They do duration work, treadmill time, social, they play, and then they get an hour of decompression time in the kennel. We do hourly rotations on the hour, so 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Dogs are being moved around, okay? So they're not just being stuck in group for like 5 hours or whatever, because that also feeds into overstimulation.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay?
And reactivity.
Yeah. Clients sometimes will sign up for like training sessions or walks, whatever, just to give their dog an extra activity, which is fine. We won't go out our way to train them but we will reinforce things. You know, if he for whatever reason barked here, we would correct it, just like you would correct it at home. Okay, so it helps keep everything on the same page.
With the collar?
With the collar,
Yeah.
if needed, or I do, you know, I use Cesar Milan methodology. Are you familiar with Cesar Milan?
Yeah.
The dog whisperer?
Yeah.
Yeah, he does hand corrections. Say, like he would say, you know, to mimic a dog bite. I do the same thing too. It just takes more skill. People,
You have to get the claw.
the claw,
thing, right?
exactly. Yeah. So like what I'm doing here with this guy is Cesar Milan. This is what he does. He just puts pressure on the dog. And if you look at the way I'm doing my hand, I'm going like that because I want it to feel like teeth.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So the moment he lays down, I release that bite. Yeah. Okay. Anything else?
Well, how do we actually schedule appointments?
That'll be through Tina.
Okay.
So you can mull it over, decide which one to do. 6 at minimum, 9 if you'd like. And if you want to kind of expedite the process, you can email us and say, hey Tina, sign us up for 9, right? She'll send you all the information and send her your schedules as well. Okay, where the both of you would be available.
Yeah.
Send windows of time,
Yeah.
not specific times.
Yeah.
Okay, because when people go Monday at 5, Tuesday at 3, it's too specific to my calendars all over the place.
Yeah.
But if she has a window, she's like, okay, that window fits in with this little spot here. Okay, and then it's typically recurring. So if you did Saturday at 2 o'clock, every Saturday at 2 o'clock for X amount of weeks would be your time. No one can take it from you.
How long is it for?
An hour. An hour, yep. And then let's say you have to cancel or reschedule. As long as you give us a 48-hour window in advance to and let us know, not a big deal. You won't lose the class. We'll just either postpone or we'll move to another day. If you cancel within 48 hours, we give everybody a cancellation freebie because it happens. If you cancel the day of, we have to count as a class, especially if I'm at Oz Park, because I'm just sitting there for an hour.
Yeah.
Okay. But otherwise, you won't lose those classes as long as you're giving us enough window of opportunity so she can try to fill in those spots. So like, let's say you do 9 classes, but you're like out of town for 4 weeks. By the time we hit that 9th week, you'll have used what we call your priority time. If it's still available, you'll keep it for those other classes. But otherwise, if it's booked, because people are booking ahead of time, she'll just contact you and say like, hey, you used up your priority time. What other times are you available so we can wrap up these other classes if you want? Okay. Anything else?
No. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So she'll follow up with you. Otherwise, you can also email her just with the schedule and what you'd like to do, and then she'll send you a contract form. The moment that form is returned, she knows you're serious, and she'll start the process. Feel free to ask questions on the contract. It's pretty straightforward. Sometimes clients ask a lot of questions, and then they'll be like, okay, I'm ready. And then like I'm booked up for the day that they want. And then they're like, what happened? I'm like, well, we were going back and forth with questions that I got booked up. Okay. But please feel free to ask. Otherwise, it was a pleasure meeting everybody. Nothing out of the ordinary for me. He's not a lost cause. Okay. There's hope for him.
I mean, he's, I will say he's much sweeter than our old dog.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's like the most affectionate little guy like ever, but he's just like,
The barking.
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yeah.
All right,
You're free, buddy.
we're gonna try.
Here you go.
Thank you so much.
You're very
Nice to
welcome.
meet
It
you.
was a pleasure.